So this guy was 96 years old. I remember his name. He was their family fondly called him Babuji. And he came into my clinic with his granddaughter and his son. Now he came and told me ke maja nathi aati mane. He said that he's not enjoying life anymore. And that really struck a chord with me as to why should we deny joy to a 96-year-old man. He was completely mobile, ambulant, doing all his activities of daily living completely independent. So here we are at a crossroads of what to do with this gentleman.
The human brain is one of the most fascinating but also the least understood frontiers of medicine. Brain surgery sits at this remarkable intersection of skill, science, and split second decision making. And today we are going to pick on the brain of a neurosurgeon who's going to take us on this journey of brain surgery. Welcome to this podcast from the week where we have Dr. Mazda Turel, who will unravel the mysteries of the brain, take us through this phenomenally interesting world of brain surgery, and unpack some real life neurological cases and the decisions behind them. Dr. Mazda Turel is one of country's most prominent, respected, and renowned neurosurgeons who takes on cases not just for his technical brilliance, but also with his patient first approach. Today, I'm here with him, and he's going to unravel some of the most interesting cases that he comes across in his daily practice. So let's dive right in. Thank you, Dr. Turel, for joining us at the week here. Let me first start with a very interesting conversation that we had some time back when you told me that surgery is not just about technical capabilities and the skill, but there is so much more. There was this case study of a 96-year-old patient who came to you some time back who was losing vision, who was slowly losing his vision. And he had already gone, I think, to many other specialists as well who had refused surgery. But what was it that that made you accept it, and what was going on in your mind at that time? Paint a picture for us. What was it like when he first came to you?
First of all, thank you for having me here. And it's wonderful to share beautiful patient experiences because it really gives people an insight about what people really go through. They say that in medicine, you take about 5 years to learn how to operate. And you take about 10 more years to learn when to operate and when not to operate. So the technicality of surgery is extremely important. My professor once used to say, any monkey can operate, but that I don't think is entirely true because you really need technical expertise to pull off a good operation. But that can be trained and learnt. But on whom to operate, on whom not to operate, and when to operate and when not to operate, I think those are the greatest challenges that we face, especially in neurosurgery. So this guy was 96 years old. I remember his name. He was, their family fondly called him Babuji. And he came into my clinic with his granddaughter and his son. And the granddaughter was a renowned is a renowned anesthesiologist in another hospital, and he started losing vision. I think for the last 6 months or so in both his eyes, and they went to an ophthalmologist first, rightly so. And the ophthalmologist looked at the eye and said, "There's no problem with the eye. The lens was okay. The cornea was okay. There was no. He'd already had cataract surgeries done a couple of years ago, but he was continuing to lose vision. Macula was fine. Retina was okay, and so, rightfully so, the astute ophthalmologist got a MRI done, which showed a large tumor that was compressing on his optic nerves It arises from what is called as the pituitary gland. And it was going up from the pituitary gland. This is the pituitary gland, and these are the optic nerves. So while it was growing in size, it was pressing against the optic nerve, which is how he was having his vision that was going down. And he said that, everything looks like a blur to me, and I can't see, and I'm not happy. And he just wanted something done for it desperately, because otherwise he was okay. I mean, he couldn't hear a little bit. He had a hearing aid, but at 96, that's okay. He was walking with a walking stick. He was completely mobile, ambulant, doing all his activities of daily living completely independent. So here we are at a crossroads of what to do with this gentleman, because he had a little bit of a cardiac problem. He had a couple of stents in his heart, and he was on blood thinners. So from a surgical perspective, whether such an old man will be able to withstand general anesthesia, and his daughter was an anesthetist, and everybody in the family was dissuading him from having an operation. His entire family was about 35, 40 people, and several of them were renowned doctors practicing in the US, and all of them were planning to come down in case we made a decision to have an operation.
Yeah, but at that time, I mean, this was a case where even I think your colleagues in the medical fraternity told you that if something goes wrong, it ends with you, and many of them refused to operate. How does a doctor operate with this kind of responsibility and pressure? And the family was also, of course, they said we will accept any outcome with folded hands, but that also in a way adds another level of pressure. So what was it like?
Yeah, it is the right of a doctor to refuse treatment if he feels that it might be of greater risk to a patient than benefit, or if he feels that this is not something that he or she should be doing. A lot of things. Sometimes you might be early on in your career and you don't want to risk a complication. Sometimes you have a gut feeling, once you've done enough of surgery, you can sometimes smell complications. When a patient comes and sits into your room, you can actually know that this is a disaster waiting to happen, and you can politely refuse to take on the case. At the same time, sometimes your gut or your intuition will tell you that this is something that you should go ahead and do. Now, he came and told me that maja nathi aati mane. He said that he's not enjoying life anymore. And that really struck a chord with me as to why should we deny joy to a 96-year-old man just because he's lived all his life beautifully but wants to continue to do so? Who are we to say that no, this is the limit to which you can enjoy your life? So we went ahead and explained to the family, of course, all the risks that are involved, and primarily the risks of operating on a tumor like this are mostly anesthesia related. Whether he can withstand the operation, whether his heart is in a good condition, whether his lungs are okay to withstand anesthesia. And obviously, there are risks to brain tumor surgery as well. And this was an operation that we were going to perform from the nose into the brain. So we didn't have to open up the head, but we had to go inside into the nose with an endoscope and then drill out a little bit of the bone that was covering the gland, and then get into the gland and remove the tumor and relieve pressure from the optic. It's like, scraping a speed breaker from inside to flatten it out a little bit. So we've done hundreds of these operations before. So from a technical point of view, it was not as much of a challenge as what could go unexpectedly wrong.
Given his age?
Given his other comorbidities of a heart condition, of hypertension, of diabetes, etc.
He had heart blockages also?
He had a couple of stents in his heart.
He already had stents
In his heart. But otherwise, his heart function was deemed to be okay by the cardiologist.
But the surgery went smoothly?
So
Right.
we
It was.
operated on. I mean, his finally when the decision was made
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
the operation, we explained to them the risk. They said, and all of them coming down from America. America is a pretty litigious society. You can
Right.
get sued at the. They said we accept and we understand any possibility that can go wrong,
Yeah.
and you just go ahead and do it because this is what he wants,
Right.
even though we may not want it.
Yeah.
And he is the head of our family,
That was
and
very gracious of them
he's
also. Yeah, I'm sure.
we've always gone by, and elderly people are a little rigid in their thinking. They don't
Right.
listen to anybody. Today the youngsters do the same thing, but so we went ahead and did in fact, the physician who flew down from America wanted to see the operation, so he came to the operation theater. That also adds a little pressure.
Right. Yeah.
But we did a fantastic operation. It went off so smoothly. The anesthesia part went off very well.
Right.
Uh,
But,
we did the
right.
operation beautifully. We were
Right.
able to remove the entire tumor. We freed up the optic nerves, and I was very happy
Right.
with the outcome of the operation.
So the heart rate and the blood pressure remained super controlled throughout the surgery.
Throughout the surgery,
Right.
but just
But-
as we finished,
Yeah. 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 That's
just
what.
as we
yeah,
finished the
yeah.
operation, the blood pressure crashed.
Right.
And it wasn't because we had any untoward bleeding during the operation. There was no chaos. There was no turmoil. It's not like we were losing blood. It just crashed. Sometimes the system doesn't withstand that kind of a stress or a load. But luckily, the anesthetist was very good, and they were able to bring the blood pressure up
Okay.
to normal without any.
So there was no damage.
There was no damage, or so we thought.
Okay.
And he was extubated. Extubation means removing the breathing tube off the ventilator, and he woke up nicely after the operation.
But I have heard that when he woke up, but that was also the hardest time, because when he woke up and he said
he
that I can't see anything.
He just shocked me by
and
saying
yeah,
that I can't
I mean,
see.
very surprisingly.
And my heart just sank, and 1,000 thoughts cross your mind at
yeah.
the time
Yeah.
as to what could have gone wrong. Have you inadvertently damaged something? But we hadn't. We went back and reviewed the operation, which is available to see on a screen. We hadn't damaged anything. My postulation was that probably some drop in blood pressure would have compromised the vascularity of the nerve.
Okay.
At that age, everything is
Right.
very fine balance.
Yeah.
And
God.
but we got an emergency CT scan done.
Okay.
That didn't show anything.
Okay.
It was absolutely clean. The tumor cavity was nice. There was no blood. There was no bleeding.
And
We
yet
got an
he could not
MRI
see.
done
Yeah.
to make sure that there's no stroke,
Yeah.
or there's no infarct, or there's no
Yeah.
tiny damage to the optic nerve.
Yeah.
And yet he couldn't see.
But with both the eyes, he could. There
He
was
couldn't
no
see
sight
with-
in either eye.
in both the eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, we kept the blood pressure up. We
Yeah.
kept him in the ICU for a
Yeah.
couple of hours. And then by evening, he said his vision in one eye had begun to come back.
Yeah. My God. That must have been
And I
nail-biting
was,
time.
and the other eye was still down. And the other eye, I remember he had a ptosis. Ptosis means that the eyelid had also drooped
Acha.
after the operation. And that could be because one of the cranial nerves that controls eye movements could have undergone some traction from removing the tumor. And in elderly people, everything is very frail.
Right.
Everything is very sensitive. Exactly how their skin is
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
outside, probably their tissue is on the
On
inside.
the inside, yeah.
And any kind of, sometimes, we have a dictum in neurosurgery that you can develop a paralysis of the nerve just by looking at it in elderly people. I mean, we talk about it in a way
Right.
to
My
say
God.
that everything is
Yeah,
very,
it
very
is.
sensitive, and you
Right.
have to be very controlled with, and that's why, the technicality of surgery comes in.
Right.
And while surgery is a skill,
Yeah.
how your hand touches the tissue. I mean, it may, to someone watching, an expert and a novice may look,
Right.
it's like watching Federer play tennis. Someone like him makes it look so easy that you
Yeah.
think you can do it.
Right.
But
But it's
there's a certain
only-
finesse to
correct.
it that is
Right.
requires a lot of mastery of, you have haptic feedback from tissue, and probably a little more handling of the tissue can damage these nerves.
Right. That's
But
where
I
your
was
experience comes in, of course.
That's when experience comes in. That's
Yeah.
when you know where to stop.
Right. Was this
How much.
surgery longer than it would have been in maybe a 40-year-old or something?
No, no.
Okay.
It was just as we planned it. It
Okay.
went off as perfectly as one could imagine. And but sometimes, even though you do a perfect job, the outcome is not what you imagine it to be. And then, luckily, he was hale and hearty.
You must
He
have heaved
wasn't.
a sigh of relief when his vision came back in the
His vision
evening.
came back. His vision came back in the other eye also, but he still couldn't see because he had a droop of the eyelid, and that droop of the eyelid improved a couple of weeks later,
Okay.
completely.
Okay.
He was. I mean, the family eventually, when they got discharged,
Yeah. Yeah.
were very grateful that we went ahead and did this.
And the most crucial part, I think, is also that the family did not panic. You know, I think his wife was
His
only
wife,
a
yeah.
year younger to him. Yes.
And she used to come to the hospital dressed in an immaculate sari every
Yes.
single day with her hair done, and she said that when he lost his vision temporarily, all of you all were panicking, but
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
absolutely fine, and I knew that he's going to be okay. I guess
Love.
faith and love and
Yes.
wisdom of that kind of devotion also plays a role in outcome. I believe so. There's always a higher force for which we don't have a scientific explanation in medicine that restores outcomes most often, and sometimes things can go the other way. I mean, we have no explanation. If he couldn't regain his vision, we would think that this is the biggest mistake of our life.
Yeah, but at
We
that
would-
time when you saw him recovering, when between him not being able to see and regaining his vision, what were those crucial hours? What did they mean to you? What were you?
a myriad of
It is-
thoughts go into your head, and you're not able to. But you're supposed to channelize your thoughts. You're supposed to. I took a couple of opinions from a few senior doctors immediately,
Yeah,
asking if there's anything different that we should be doing at this point in time,
yeah,
and they didn't have an answer either. And sometimes, as hard and as difficult as it may seem, waiting it out or holding on patiently without doing anything. There's a term in surgery or in medicine which we use, which is called masterly inactivity.
okay.
So
Masterly inactivity.
masterly inactivity. So if you're there on the ball, but you don't have to do anything at times and wait for nature to do the healing, without the temptation of wanting to rush back inside. There's a temptation to go back and open up the thing again and
Yeah.
see and check if there's anything that the MRI is not picking up. But you have to sometimes just give things time and patience, and they have a tendency to heal.
Right. So, you know, Dr. Turel, you are often described as someone who pushes the envelope. But I also believe that there are times in most of these cases, in many of your cases also, where it's more about waiting, as you said, as you rightly said. Where do you draw the line when it comes to respecting the choice? And when do you decide, ki, no, we will not do this surgery, or no, I refuse to do this? Or when do you decide, ki, no, okay, fine, I will go ahead, which, as you did in this case, when others said no, we will not touch it, but you said no, I will go ahead. So this choosing to respect someone's choice and taking a medical call, how do you?
I think it has a lot to do, first of all, with your own competence. If you feel that you're competent enough to do an operation like this, then that solves half the problem. And I think the other battle is your intuition that comes from your experience of having done similar cases before. Like, for example, I had another 96-year-old man who had a big blood clot in his head. And he came to us partly semi-comatose. And the family said, don't do an operation, just let him go in peace. And I insisted that some blood clots, you should just let them go because there's no chance of a recovery.
Right.
But
Okay.
this is what was called as a chronic subdural hematoma, in which
Okay.
all you need to do is put a hole in the brain and drain the blood, and patients make fantastic recoveries.
Okay.
And that we had to explain to the family, And finally, they agreed, and we did
Right.
the
What is it called
operation.
again?
A
What?
chronic subdural hematoma.
Okay.
And he is absolutely fine. And for the last 5 years, he calls me every day on his birthday, telling me that you've given me a new lease to life. So he's going to turn 100 next year.
Wow.
So
This
you have
is
to really decide
right.
on where you have to hold restraint.
Right.
Like, let's say there's another old man with a hemorrhage inside his brain, and you know the outcomes of these things are not good. To go into surgery to prolong life unnecessarily, where patients going to be on a ventilator for a long time, where tubes are going to be sticking through every orifice in the body. I don't think that's. But again, these are choices that you have to make along with the patient and their family. It's never a choice that you make on your own. You explain to them the honest outcomes, the honest possibilities, and obviously there is a chance that sometimes the outcome may not be what you've explained, and that also you have to hold space for.
I think this is what younger doctors also have to learn, or they have to, because there are so many things in play here. There's restraint. There is obviously respecting choice. There's also the willingness or not of taking the risk, of course, depending upon your own competence. If you were to advise or give a piece of advice to doctors who are listening to you, what would it be?
If I were to advise younger doctors, I'm still young myself, so don't make me look
The
very
ones
old.
who are just
I would
getting
advise
graduated. Yeah.
younger doctors not to take up any seemingly complicated cases when they're in the first 5 years of their career.
Okay.
And if they do, they should have a support of a senior person present in the operation theatre to back them up.
Okay.
Because what happens is that if you have major complications very early on in your life, it affects your confidence, it affects your morale, it affects your ability, you keep doubting yourself. Uh, so that shouldn't happen to you, because you have a very long career ahead of you.
Right, Dr. Turel, you have really you remind us that the the bravest thing in medicine and is not just what you do with your hands, but the faith that you carry in your heart as a doctor, and obviously, I mean, as patients trust you, I think that faith is restored in each and every case that you handle. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you for talking to us at this in this podcast for the week, and we look forward to many more episodes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to sharing so many stories that are really so interesting and fascinating, that it allows someone watching a glimpse into the real lives of people, and whether they've made it or whether they've not, and how they've overcome so many battles and challenges. And unless you become a patient, you really don't know what someone else is going through. And knock on wood, hopefully all of us should have happy and healthy lives. And y'all don't need doctors.